Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the most ambitious video that I have ever done on my channel. I'm a little bit nervous about this. I don't know why. I think because I've just never done a vlog this long before, so I don't know how it's gonna go. But basically in this vlog, I am gonna be reading the 11 books that were chosen to be Waterstones Thrillers of the Month in 2022. Now there's only 11 books on the list because I didn't realise this, but apparently Waterstones takes a break in December from their books of the month. They don't just do thrillers of the month, I should say. They also have a fiction book of the month and a non-fiction book of the month and a few other genres. But yeah, they take a break in December because they have their books of the year. So there's only 11 books that I'm reading in this vlog. I mean, 12 would have been a nicer, rounder number, but also this vlog took me 3 months to film, so I'm not complaining that there was one less book on the list. I've never done a challenge like this on my channel before, and I really liked the idea of this vlog not making me read because I'm choosing to read these books, but I really liked the idea of this vlog introducing me to books that I had never heard of and that I've never seen mentioned anywhere on BookTube or Bookstagram. I really liked the idea of possibly finding some underrated favourites. We'll see if that actually happened. I am filming this intro after having read all the books, so I can tell you that there were some mixed results. There will be timestamps in the description just in case you would like to skip ahead at any point, or if there's any particular books that you're interested in. I tried to keep my reviews short because I didn't want this vlog to be super long, but yeah, I will also do a section at the end of this video where I rank all the books that I read and I talk through which I would recommend and just some general thoughts and feelings as well on this experience, because it has been an experience. I don't know if I'm going to try and do this video again next year. I think if I do, then I'd probably read the books in order as they're announced. But I'm going to stop rambling and let's get into the vlog. So I am around halfway through The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, which was January's thriller of the month, and I'm enjoying it so far. I'm not really sure what I was expecting. I don't think it's going to be a new favourite or anything like that, but there's a decent atmosphere and I like the writing. I'm listening to the audiobook and it's well narrated in my opinion. It's a pretty standard crime thriller where we're following a detective who's investigating stuff. So basically, I think this is going to be the first book in a series that follows this detective called Ellen Warner, I think is her name. Basically, she hasn't worked for like a year because of something traumatic that happened. However, she's now on this holiday with her partner and they're visiting her brother Isaac and his fiance. The place that they're at is this luxury hotel that used to be a sanatorium, so it was converted a few years ago. Not long after Ellen arrives, there's this storm and there's this mystery because someone or some people have gone missing. Yeah, it's a pretty standard mystery crime thriller and I'm liking it. I like the writing and I like that there's this atmosphere. The setting reminds me a little bit of One by One by Ruth Ware, which I did really enjoy. I think this is leaning more towards being a mystery than a thriller, but yeah, it's okay so far. I'm nervous that because this feels quite simple at the moment, I'm nervous that I've already worked out something or everything that's going on. I'm really hoping it's going to surprise me. Generally, I do tend to like thrillers where you're following a detective because I find them more realistic than if there's a mystery like involving a missing person or a murder. I find it more realistic to follow a detective than a civilian because I keep thinking to myself, this would never happen. And I don't like it when thrillers make me suspend disbelief too much. I do think with this book, it's really towing the line where I'm not fully understanding why characters are doing or reacting in certain ways. So that's a little frustrating, I guess. And something else that I'm not loving is that there's this detachment between like how I feel about the main character. I don't feel that close to her. I think this would work better if it was told in first person point of view and if it was told just from Ellen's perspective, because I found the other perspectives a little bit random and I don't think they've really added much to the story. I mean, I might be wrong and it might be that they're more relevant the further that you get into the book. But yeah, this is feeling very average at the moment. I think if I was to make a prediction, I reckon it's going to be around 3 stars, but it all depends on whether it surprises me at the end. Okay, so I finished The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, and wow, this went downhill very quickly, and I'm going to try to be balanced. I don't want to rant about this book too much, but I really didn't like it in the end. I think I'm going to give it 2 stars. And it's such a shame because I really liked the atmosphere in the beginning. I really like isolated settings where characters are cut off from the rest of the world, because I think it's just a natural way to create this atmosphere. I don't know, I usually really love those kind of settings, but this just yeah, it went on a downhill spiral. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I didn't understand any of the characters' motivations, and the main character started to really frustrate me because she's meant to be a detective and yet she was doing stuff that was so unbelievable because she wasn't just putting herself in danger, she was putting other people in danger. It reached a point where it started to feel so over dramatic that it was feeling like a pantomime. The plot twists as well either felt really lazy or unbelievable, and there was one in particular that I just don't think was even needed. I don't actually understand why it was included. Obviously I'm not going to go into spoilers, but when the final reveals started to happen, I was rolling my eyes because it was just so unbelievable. It was just, I don't even know how to explain it. It was so ridiculous and I got so annoyed that, yeah, I'm going to give this 2 stars. It's a shame because I think that this had the potential to be really good. I was expecting this to feel more like The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James, and it was feeling more like Lucy Foley's books, which I thought were just okay. I mean, this was way over the top and unrealistic. Yeah, it's a shame that we're not off to a better start with this vlog, but hopefully we'll have more luck with the other books on this list. So I have finished reading 16 Horses by Greg Buchanan, which was the February book of the month, and I don't know how I feel about it. I finished it like 2 days ago and I'm still trying to process my thoughts because it wasn't what I was expecting, but I don't really know what I was expecting because of the books on the list, this was one of the ones that I hadn't heard of. So all I really had to go off was the synopsis, and it did sound really intriguing. There's not really much plot though, is what I will say. I'm going to try and explain what this book is about, but I'm still not entirely sure, and I've finished the book, so that should tell you how I felt about it. Basically, this is about a small seaside town in England where one morning a farmer and his daughter find 16 horses buried on their land. So the police are called and this police officer shows up to start investigating. So you follow him, but you also follow the veterinary forensic expert that's also brought in to help. However, the book isn't really about the investigation. That's kind of going on in the background. It's more about this community. So you follow various other perspectives of the people that live in this town. There's also kind of a mystery element, but I wouldn't want to promote this book based on the mystery because I didn't understand the mystery. There was a lot about this book that I didn't really understand. It was a very disjointed and it was, I think, deliberately written to be confusing, but the atmosphere was 10 out of 10. Like, it was very bleak and very dark and it felt almost apocalyptic. I listened to the audiobook for this because I found it through my library, and I will say that the narration on the audiobook was fantastic. I felt like the narrator their voice matched the tone that I expected based on the writing style. I wasn't actually sure whether it would work on audio because it's a very descriptive writing style, but I think the narrator is what kept me engaged a lot longer than I probably would have been engaged if I'd read it physically. Even though it wasn't 100% for me, I don't think it was a bad book at all, and I don't really understand why it has such a low average rating on Goodreads. So this has, at the time that I'm filming this, a 3.04 average rating on Goodreads, which is one of the lowest ratings that I've ever seen. However, I don't think that it's a bad book. I think it maybe just hasn't found the right audience yet. Not sure yet what I'm going to rate it. I'm kind of torn between a 2 and a 3 stars. I think I'm going to wait a few months and decide then based on how memorable it is and whether it sticks around in my brain. I have seen though that they might be turning this into a TV show, and I would be interested in watching it because I think that certain aspects would work better on screen and maybe it would be less confusing because there were a lot of characters in this and I found myself getting very confused at who we were following at certain times. So I have made a start on March's book, which was Greenwich Park by Katherine Faulkner, and I'm not that far into it. I think I've read the first 100 pages or something like that, and I'm liking it so far, but it's a very tentative liking. I wouldn't have picked this book up if it hadn't been for this challenge, because it's a domestic thriller, and I don't tend to like domestic thrillers, or actually that's probably unfair. I tend to be quite picky with domestic thrillers because I read a lot of them back when I was first getting into thrillers. I feel like when people think of thrillers, the type of thriller that they think of is a domestic thriller, and I've learned over time that they just don't hold my attention that well, and I end up feeling quite bored because usually they're quite over dramatic and I just don't care. I think as well, yeah, the characters are usually very unlikable. However, this has been okay so far. We're following a woman who, her name's Helen, and she's pregnant and she's on maternity leave. She goes to this NCT class, which I think is basically a birthing class, and she ends up going alone because her husband is always working late, and she ends up making friends with this woman called Rachel, who at first she doesn't really like because Rachel is quite brash and loud and outspoken. Helen's is the main perspective that we're following, but there's also been a few other random chapters with other points of view, including Helen's sister-in-law, who's also her best friend. They all went to uni together, basically, and it feels like there might be secrets that people are holding back, and I feel like I've already worked some stuff out, but I'm not gonna say obviously what I think is going on, but based on some of the other perspectives, I don't know, I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and I'm hoping that what I'm thinking is just a red herring. Yeah, I don't know whether the author is trying to lead us down one path and distract us from something else that might be going on, but I mean, this is reasonably fast-paced, so I am, yeah, reading it quite quickly, and it's okay so far. Someone please explain to me how it's possible that I have nothing positive to say about this book, but I'm still really enjoying it. Like, the characters are really, really unlikable and they're really frustrating, but I'm addicted and I can't stop reading it. I do think it's well written. I think that it's meant to be unsettling and slow and uncomfortable, and I think that if you like domestic dramas, then maybe you would like this. I need to see how it ends first because I have theories on stuff. To be fair, this hasn't been as predictable as I was expecting it to be. I think it all really hinges on the ending, on whether I'm going to give this 3 or 4 stars, but somehow I'm enjoying it. Maybe it's because I just don't read that many domestic thrillers anymore. this is feeling unique to me, but the story isn't unique. It's reminded me a little bit of Lisa Jewell's books, and I like Lisa Jewell books. I read them every so often, but it's one of those situations where I read them, I enjoy them, and then I forget about them, and I feel like it's a similar situation with this book. So I finished reading Greenwich Park by Katherine Faulkner, and I don't have much more to say about this book. I enjoyed it, but I don't really know why. It's a very slow burn, and you do spend a lot of time inside the characters' minds and just following them as they go about their daily lives, I guess. There's a lot of family drama as well, and a lot of petty friendship drama. I don't think I actually mentioned, but you do know from the very first chapter that someone is in prison for something, and you don't know who's in prison, you don't know what they did. All you know is that it's not Helen, because they're writing a letter to Helen. So there is that mystery, and I think that's what gripped me, is that I wanted to know what happened, and there were some really clever twists and turns in this book, actually. Quite enjoyed that, even though the characters were really frustrating. And what spoilt this book for me, actually, was the characters were doing stuff that I guess wasn't completely unrealistic. There were some characters that were very naive and that were acting a bit too gullible, and so that was the only thing that annoyed me. I don't think I'd go out my way to recommend it because it's not the most original story. I mean, unless you love domestic thrillers, in which case I would say give this one a go, but I'm glad that I read it. I did enjoy it, and I'm gonna give it like a 3.5 stars overall. I can't remember if I said that already. Okay, so April's book of the month was How to Kidnap the Rich by Rahul Raina, I think is how you pronounce the author's name. And this was okay. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars because it was entertaining in places and I did like the concept, but the execution didn't quite work for me. It's a very sarcastic and satirical writing style. It's told in first person point of view as well, and I did think that worked for the tone of the book, but it wasn't really my kind of thing. So basically this is following a guy called Ramesh, and he makes a living by taking exams on behalf of rich kids. So these rich people hire him to take exams for their kids to get them into university. It's kind of like Mike Ross in Suits, that kind of situation. And at the start of the book, Ramesh takes these exams on behalf of his latest client, and he finds out that he's actually placed top in the whole country. So it gathers a lot of media attention. Obviously no one knows that it was really him that took the exams on behalf of this kid, but this kid, whose name is Rudy, I think, he ends up becoming famous and he gets given all of these opportunities, and Ramesh blackmails the family into giving him a job as Rudy's manager, and the story kind of goes from there. I really liked the first half because it was following our main character's childhood, and I really enjoyed that aspect, but from, I guess, the second half onwards, I didn't really like it. It was okay, it was entertaining in places, but it started to feel a bit repetitive, and it was a little over the top, so it just wasn't my kind of thing. It's not a bad book. I think that if you like this kind of sarcastic writing style, then I would recommend it. It just wasn't for me in the end. So yeah, I'm gonna give it like 3 stars, I think. I am now over halfway through The Khan by Saima Mir, which was May's book of the month, and I've borrowed this from my library, so I'm going to have to hold it at an angle because it has a very shiny cover. But I was going to do an update for this when I was around halfway through, but I'm really enjoying this. It's very compulsively readable, so I didn't want to put it down. I think I've only got about 100 pages left, and yeah, really enjoying this so far. It's very dark and it's very slow and character driven, which isn't what I was expecting based on the cover. I thought this was going to be very violent and very action packed, and so far there hasn't been that much action. It has been more about exploring the characters' relationships, and it's been more about this community. So basically this book follows members of this Muslim family who live in, I think, Sheffield, around that area of the UK. And the father of this family is a prominent figure within the local community, and he's also the leader of the local crime syndicate. The eldest daughter is, I guess, the main character that we're following. We do flick between a few different perspectives, but the main character is called Gia, and she was very close with her father growing up, but then something happened that meant that she's become kind of estranged from them. She's not fully cut contact, but she now lives in London and she works as a barrister. However, at the start of the book, she returns home for her sister's wedding, and then this tragic event happens that means that she has to become more involved in the family's criminal activities. It's a very meandering writing style, and the timeline is flicking back and forth a lot. There's been a lot of family politics and a lot of social commentary, and I'm finding it really interesting seeing how the main character Gia is navigating certain situations as a woman in a very male-dominated community. It's very well written, in my opinion. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I'm really interested to see what direction it goes in. So I have finished reading The Khan by Saima Mir, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, and I really liked in particular the atmosphere and how dark it felt, and how there was this slow burning tension throughout the story where you felt like you were building up to something. I really liked the direction this went in. I think I already explained actually that this follows a Pakistani community in the north of England, and basically a group of Eastern Europeans move into the city and they're trying to take over. So it's about this community pushing back, and it's about them trying to fight against that, both politically and also physically. More politically though, and strategically. I really liked the quietness of this. I've seen a few reviews from people that said they were disappointed because they didn't think that this was thrilling enough, and I will say that it felt more like a crime drama rather than a thriller. So I think that if you go into this with the right expectations, then it's probably more enjoyable. The main reason I'm giving it 4 stars and not 5 stars is because I felt like the pacing was a little bit off in places, and it was a little bit jarring. Otherwise though, I would recommend this if you like political family crime dramas. I really enjoyed this, considering that I'd never heard of this book before I started this video. I think it's actually going to end up being one of my favourites. I have no idea where to even start with my review for the Maidens, but I should tell you now that I pretty much hated this book, and I'm probably going to give it 1 star? I don't know, because I can't think of anything that I liked about it. I can remember when this book came out, there was a lot of hype for it on BookTube and Bookstagram and maybe even BookTok, to be fair, but I think it's because Alex Michaelides also wrote The Silent Patient, which was a really popular thriller a few years ago. I thought it was just okay. I liked the writing and I thought it flowed really well. I just didn't love the ending. I was expecting there to be a really surprising twist, but I found it really predictable. When I heard about the Maidens though, I thought it sounded more of my kind of thing because it's dark academia and I love dark academia, so I was hoping to like this. I remember when it first came out, I saw quite a few negative reviews from people who I know have a similar taste in books to me, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to think. I'd actually kind of spoilt myself for something about the ending. I didn't know everything that happened in the end, but I can remember listening to a review where they mentioned something that made it quite easy for me to predict something that was going to happen at the end of the Maidens. I think otherwise, actually, I probably wouldn't have found it as predictable as I found The Silent Patient. I should probably tell you what this book is about. So we're following our main character, Mariana, who I think is around 35 or 36, and she has a niece called Zoe who's at university in Cambridge. Mariana is quite close to her niece because she basically raised her from when she was quite young. I think Zoe's parents died, when she was like a kid, and so Mariana and her husband took Zoe in and raised her like she was their own. One morning, Zoe calls Mariana and she's in a bit of an emotional state because the police have just found a body and they assume that it was murder. Zoe's convinced that the body they found is her best friend or roommate who's been missing for the past couple of days. So Mariana gets on a train to go and see Zoe to be there for her, and Zoe starts telling her about this creepy professor who she's convinced was having a relationship with her friend who went missing. Mariana then becomes convinced that this guy is guilty and that he's a murderer, and I think that's one thing that I really struggled with, is that I couldn't understand why Mariana was so fixated on this guy. I mean, he was very creepy, but I couldn't understand why she was sticking her nose into this investigation other than, I guess, morbid curiosity. It didn't feel very logical to me. There was quite a few occasions where she would do something or where she'd even think something and I couldn't see how we'd got there. I couldn't understand why she was doing certain things or why she was thinking certain things. The only example I can think of is that she meets this guy who is a bit annoying and she thinks to herself, wow, this guy is annoying. But then later on in the book, she finds herself questioning if she's attracted to this guy, and I can just remember thinking, wait, what? How did we get to this conclusion? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know, I guess she just didn't really feel like a real person to me. It's really difficult to explain without spoilers, but there were a few situations where I just thought, come on, no person would do that in reality. And I know that it's a book and sometimes things are dramatized just for the sake of it, but it really started to grate on me and I hated the ending. I think I mentioned I knew something that happens in the end, but I didn't know the full picture, and I just thought it was too over the top and it was just not my kind of thing. So yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm gonna give this probably 2 stars, maybe even 1 star. I'm trying not to be too harsh because I know that there are some people who have liked this book, but this was just not for me. It's advertised as being dark academia, but I didn't get that feeling from it at all. There was just no atmosphere that I could feel. I think it's probably my worst book of the year so far, and it wasn't even entertaining. It was just mostly boring until the end, and then all of these reveals started happening, and by that point I just thought, I don't care anymore. Now, I did read most of the books of this vlog out of order because I borrowed a lot of them from my library, so I read them as they became available. However, I thought it would still be interesting to take a look at the leaderboard for the first 6 books of the year because it's not looking great. Of these 6 books, I enjoyed 2 of them, then 2 of them I thought were just okay. They weren't really my kind of thing, and then I hated the last 2. So hopefully we'll have more luck with the final 5 books of the year. Okay, so we are now around halfway through this vlog because I've just started Lightseekers by Femi Kayode, which was July's book of the month, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's given me 4 or 5 star feelings already, and I'm only about 120 pages in, so things could quite easily change. But really enjoying this. I really like the writing style and how the setting feels very vivid. It feels very immersive, and I'm finding that when I'm reading it, I do feel drawn into the story, and I'm just really intrigued about this mystery story. So basically this book is set in Nigeria, where around a year ago there was this crime that happened. Basically 3 university students were murdered by a mob in this small town. It's kind of now a closed case, but one of the parents of one of the boys who was murdered has contacted this guy who's an investigative psychologist. He's our main character, his name's Philip, and he's been contacted by the father of one of the boys who was murdered, and he's been asked to open a kind of investigation. He's not a police officer or anything, but he's been asked to look into what could have happened because he's an expert on mob mentality. A lot of his research has been based on that. So following this guy as he travels to this small town to try and understand what happened, and the tagline on the front of the book is they already know who killed the men, they just don't know why. And that's the vein of the story, is that we know that these boys, well, these young men were murdered, but we don't really understand yet why. And I'm so intrigued. I'm finding that when I pick it up I want to keep on reading because there's something very mysterious going on. It's almost like, I don't know, I feel like when things start to be revealed, it's all going to click into place, maybe. But really enjoying this so far. I mean, I think I've mentioned already in this vlog, I do tend to like crime thrillers where you're trying to uncover a mystery, and I have really high hopes for this one. I have finished reading Light Seekers, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. However, I'm about to say some very negative stuff about it because I had a lot of issues with the ending, and I'm not going to go into any detail because obviously I want to keep things spoiler free, but the ending to me felt very rushed. And the thing is that there were a lot of different layers to this plot, which I liked at the beginning because it gave the story a lot of depth. However, towards the end, it went from being complicated to confusing, and I really didn't like one of the elements that was in this book. I'm being deliberately vague, I know, but there was a mental health related aspect that I didn't think was needed and that I didn't think was handled very well. So it meant that this book went from a 5 stars to a 4 stars, and it is a shame because I really enjoyed 90% of this book. It's just that as time went on, I found myself getting more and more frustrated. It either needed to be 100 pages longer so that all of these threads could be explored properly and in enough detail, or it should have been around 50 pages shorter, in my opinion. Obviously, this is just my opinion. I would still recommend this if you're interested in crime thrillers and if you enjoy books where you're following a main character who's investigating stuff. I did still like it. It just wasn't the 5 stars that I was hoping it to be. However, I would still read other books by this author. I think this was their debut, but the way that this was written, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more books in this series that are like companion novels. That was the feeling that I was getting as I was reaching the end. So I am currently around 100 pages into A Fatal Crossing by Tom Hindle. Don't have many thoughts on this yet, but I wanted to let you know that I've started it because I am very confused about why this book is so long. It's 100, not even 100, it's 450 pages, and I don't really understand why it's that long. It's taken me a while to get through the first 100 pages of this because it's a very slow writing style. It's historical fiction basically, set on this boat, and it's also a cosy murder mystery. So at the start of this book there's an old man who's found at the bottom of these stairs, and the captain, I think it is, thinks that it was just an accident. However, there's another passenger who's an inspector with Scotland Yard, and he insists that they investigate just to make sure that it wasn't foul play because he's a little bit suspicious around certain details to do with this accident, which might be a murder. So we're following the ship's officer and this investigator as they investigate and try and find out whether it was murder. I don't know. I'm not sure about this one. It is good and I'm intrigued, but I don't know why it's so long, and I feel like this is going to take me a long time to get through. I'm just hoping that the ending is worth it. So I am finally halfway through A Fatal Crossing by Tom Hindle. I think I'm over halfway through actually now, and it's not that I'm not enjoying this. I feel like it's taken me a while to get into it. It's fine, it's not badly written. I don't think it's a bad book, is what I'm trying to say. It's just a little bit bland, and every time I pick it up, I'm finding that it's taken me a while to get back into it because I keep forgetting who all the characters are. They're not very distinctive. I mean, the main character is this guy called Tim, and it's his point of view that we're following, and he's fine. I'm not hating being inside his mind, but the inspector guy, what's his name, Temple, he's an asshole. I really do not like him. I don't understand why he's so grumpy and why he keeps having a go at this poor guy who's just trying to do his job. So yeah, that's annoying me a little bit. Sorry if my chair's squeaking, but I'm sat in my office because I've just finished work. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's gonna go either way in the second half. Either it's gonna really pick up and there's gonna be some amazing twists and I'm gonna really enjoy it, or it's just going to get more and more boring. I do like the atmosphere and the setting and how this is taking place on a boat. It's just, yeah, there's certain things that are frustrating me and I really want there to be more excitement. I was going to say action. I don't need action. I just need this to be more interesting. Was this the most interesting mystery that I have ever read? No, it was not. However, I was enjoying the second half of this right up until the very end. And by that I mean literally the last few chapters. I did not enjoy the way that this book ended, and it's such a shame because I was feeling, you know, kind of lukewarm about it the whole way through, but I thought, you know what, if this has a good ending, it's gonna get like a 3.5 stars. To be fair, it was a bold choice, and I do appreciate it when authors do that, when they take a risk, because sometimes it really pays off, but this ending was not good. In my opinion, I think some people would read this ending and think, wow, that was actually pretty good, because it is very shocking, but I didn't think that it made sense in the context of the wider book. I didn't feel like it fit in with the tone of what this book had been up until that point. So yeah, was a little disappointed with the ending. I think I am still going to give it like a 3 stars because the mystery was fine and I wasn't hating it up until that point. I might change my mind and give it like a 2.5 stars if I feel really annoyed by the time I come to rate this on Goodreads. But yeah, this was just okay. I think if you do like closed circle mysteries, then maybe still give this one a go, because I do think that some people would love the ending of this. I just didn't. So I am now over halfway through A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willingham, which was September's book of the month. And I'm reading this on my Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy, but this was the book that sparked this whole vlog idea, because I saw this in Waterstones and thought it sounded really exciting, and so far it's living up to my expectations. I was reading this last night and I was really struggling to put it down because it was so gripping and compelling, and it's very fast-paced. It's basically about this woman called, what is her name? Her name's Chloe, and she, when she was a kid, her dad was convicted of being a serial killer, so she's carried around a lot of trauma related to that, but she's now in her 30s, and on the outside it seems like she's got her life back together because she's got a stable job working as a psychologist, she's engaged, and so from the outside looking in, it seems like she's doing okay, but you do learn in the beginning of the book that she's struggling with a drug addiction. She's addicted to prescription drugs. So you can tell that she's still very much haunted by what happened in the past. And then teenage girls in her town start going missing, and she thinks there might be similarities to what happened in the past. It brings up a lot of unresolved feelings, but she doesn't know whether she's paranoid paranoid and whether there are actually similarities or whether she's just looking for comparisons because of what she went through. Sorry if the lighting keeps changing, by the way, but I'm filming in front of the window and the sun does not know what it wants to do today. But yeah, I'm really liking the writing, and I like how this is told in first person perspective, because I feel like it's really taken us inside the mind of the main character, and we're seeing how she feels being the daughter of the serial killer. You see how people treat her as soon as they find out who she really is, and yeah, like, it's interesting because usually I do prefer plot-driven thrillers, and this has a good plot, but I do think that it is more character-driven at the moment. There's been a lot of build-up, and there's this really good tension because I am suspicious of many people. There's a few side characters in this book that I don't know, I'm not sure about them. I feel like people are holding secrets. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm really excited about this one. Whenever I pick it up, I don't want to put it down, so I think I might actually be able to finish this tonight, and I only started it a couple of days ago. It's the kind of thriller that I would have loved to have read in one sitting if I'd had the time, but I've been really busy this week, so I haven't been able to read as much as I would have liked. There's a quote on the front cover by Karen Slaughter where she says that this has plot twists that I apparently won't see coming, and I'm still waiting for them, Karen. I'm hoping that I'm not going to be disappointed, but like I said, there is that mystery in the present day where teenage girls are going missing, and I think there's a few different directions that this could go in. Sometimes with stories like this, you have a past timeline and a present day timeline, but I like that this just has a present day timeline, and then you occasionally get flashbacks to what happened in the past. And I like that. I think that sometimes with dual timelines, it can be a bit confusing, but I'm following this really easily. It's flowing really well, and I'm excited to get back to it. So I finished reading A Flicker in the Dark, and I think I'm going to give this 4 stars. Even though I didn't think that this was 100% predictable, I think there was enough going on that even though I had my suspicions, I was still surprised at times, which is quite difficult. Like, it's not often that a thriller will surprise me. It didn't shock me though, that's what I'm trying to say, I think. But this reminded me a lot of the thrillers that got me into reading thrillers. I think on the blurb or on the front cover, it's recommended for fans of Gillian Flynn, and I would agree with that. I mean, I used to love Gillian Flynn's books. I think it was Gone Girl and Sharp Objects, and the other one, what was her other book called? Dark Places. Those were the books that got me into reading thrillers. So it made me feel a little bit nostalgic, I guess, because it reminded me of those books, but not in a completely obvious way. It was almost like I got the feeling that this author is a fan of Gillian Flynn, and so that's naturally come across in their writing style. There were some decisions that were made in the plot that I didn't like, but it's more of a personal thing, and obviously I'm not going to go into details because of spoilers, but there was one aspect in particular that I didn't think needed to be included. This did feel very clever though. It kept me on my toes, and I would be interested in reading more books by this author. I know that this was their debut, but I think I saw that they have another book coming out soon, so I would be interested in picking that up. I am now around halfway through The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont, which I think was October's book of the month, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I like that the atmosphere matches the time period. So this is set in, I think, the 1920s or 1930s. There's kind of 2 timelines. So the present day timeline follows Agatha Christie's disappearance as told from the perspective of Agatha Christie's husband's mistress. Then the past timeline follows this woman during her teenage years, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I like that it's fiction, but it's based around something that actually happened. Like, Agatha Christie actually went missing and she never talked about what happened during the 11 days that she went missing. I think she was eventually found. Actually, I won't say, just in case you don't want to know. I'm not sure what direction this is going to go in. I feel like things are starting to click into place. The main character is coming across as an unreliable narrator. I feel like she's hiding stuff still. She's also not the most likeable character, but I quite like that, if that makes sense. I like that she's not likeable, but she's still interesting. I'm finding it interesting following her and learning more about her past and why she is the way that she is. It's good so far. So I finished reading The Christie Affair this morning. I almost finished it last night. I had like 50 pages to go, but I could feel my eyes closing. So I finished it first thing this morning, and I can't decide what to rate this. I feel like I've said that a lot in this vlog, but this to me felt like a 4 stars. However, I don't have much negative to say about it. I feel like if it sticks with me long term, then I might bump up my rating to a 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. I really liked how this wasn't what I was expecting. So it's not really about Agatha Christie's disappearance. That's kind of happening in the background. The main plot, I guess, is more to do with this main character, Nano Dear, and it's about how she came to infiltrate the lives of the Christies, and more is revealed as you get through the book. It's interesting because as I was reading this, I couldn't work out whether it was really obvious what was happening or whether I was deliberately being fed information to make me think that I had everything solved. And it was really clever, I think. I haven't Googled yet to find out how much of this book is fiction and how much actually happened. I think a lot of it is fiction, but I think I found the fictional elements the most interesting to read about. I do find the 1920s a really interesting time period to read about. I think I've read a few books that are set in between the First and Second World Wars, and I do find it really interesting. I feel like this book captured the atmosphere really well. It was a very atmospheric book, and like I said, it wasn't what I was expecting because I thought this was going to be a cozy murder mystery, and it kind of is, but I also want to give a few content warnings because I was not expecting how sad this book was going to be, and there were some quite dark elements as well. So yeah, I wanted to give a content warning for sexual assault and also anything to do with traumatic pregnancy or traumatic stuff happening during pregnancy, including miscarriage. If you're interested in this book but you haven't read anything by Agatha Christie, then same. I haven't actually read anything by Agatha Christie. I do have a few books of hers on my TBR, but I still really enjoyed this. I don't know whether actually it was a bonus, me having not read anything by Agatha Christie, because I went into this expecting it all to be fiction, and so yeah, I'm really excited actually to look up some theories behind why she actually went missing. I don't know, I feel like they acknowledged some of the actual reasons or some of the theories within the book. I think they said, oh, you know, like some people think that this was why she went missing or that this was why she went missing, and then the book obviously provided an alternative that is quite clearly fiction, but I think it was still plausible. So yeah, 4 stars, possibly even a 5 stars. It was very memorable. I will say though, it wasn't very thrilling. It did lean more towards mystery than thriller, but I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. This was another book that I hadn't really heard of before I started researching this vlog, but I have made a start on Breathless by Amy McCulloch, which was November's book of the month, and so far I'm 150 pages into this and really enjoying it so far. I really like the setting and the atmosphere, and with a book like this I want to feel like I've been transported to the location where it's taking place, because this takes place on a mountain. It's actually a real mountain. It's Mount Manusla in Nepal. I've probably completely butchered that name, but it's the 8th tallest mountain in the world, I think. Basically, we're following this main character called Cecily. Is that her name? Yeah, Cecily, who's a journalist, and she's been given this opportunity to interview this guy who's doing this challenge where he's climbing the top 8 mountains, I think it is, in the world. Or no, he's climbing all of the mountains in the world that are over 8,000 feet. So he's been gaining a lot of publicity for this, and our main character has been given the opportunity to land this interview with him, but only on the condition that she completes the climb herself and makes it to the summit. Then he'll do the interview afterwards. So our main character is a climber, but she's a very amateur climber. She's probably the least experienced in this group of people, but we're following this group of people who are trying to reach the top of this mountain, and it is really interesting. There's a lot of detail around what goes into an expedition like this, and I know from the very front paragraph that this author has actually got experience in climbing mountains. Apparently she was the youngest Canadian woman to climb Mount Manusla. I need to look up how to say that, but the author is quite experienced in climbing mountains, and I think that does come across in the writing because it's quite detailed. So yeah, like I said, really enjoying this so far. It has been a little bit slow, but I'm hoping now I'm getting to the 50% mark that it's gonna get a lot quicker and I'm gonna speed through the rest of it. I was just having a look back through Amy McCulloch's Instagram, and I had no idea that the Sherpas that are mentioned in this book are the same Sherpas that helped her during her climb, and I thought that was really cool. I like that she's, yeah, put that dedication into this book. I can definitely tell as I'm reading this that she has this real passion for mountaineering, and it is coming across in the writing. I really love that. I'm really enjoying this so far. However, I will say that I was hoping that this would be more thrilling. So from the synopsis, you know that this is going to be a murder mystery on a mountain. That's what I was expecting, and I feel like it's taken us a long time to get to that point. So that's my only criticism so far, is that this has been a bit slow, but I'm still really enjoying it, and I'm definitely intrigued by the mystery. I don't have any predictions at the moment as to what I think is going to happen, and I'm 100 pages from the end, so yeah, liking this one so far. So the ending for this wasn't great. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit unbelievable, and it felt like the thrilling elements were a bit of an afterthought. However, I really enjoyed the rest of this book. This also made me want to go out and climb a mountain, which I don't think was the author's intention, but yeah, I really liked this more than I was expecting. So I wanted to finish this video by going through my final rankings for all of the books that I read for this vlog. I'll put a graphic on the screen here just so you can see, but I think what's most interesting actually about this is that the books that I would recommend the most widely aren't the books that I personally loved the most. So the 2 books that I would recommend for people who are maybe looking to get into thrillers or who haven't read many thrillers, the 2 books that I would recommend from this list are A Flicker in the Dark and Greenwich Park. Those are the 2 books that I think most closely fit what you'd expect from a traditional thriller. Something that I actually noticed when I was reading these books is that a lot of them don't have very high average ratings on Goodreads, and I was wondering, could that be because of mismarketing, because people are picking up these books expecting them to be traditional thrillers? A lot of these books are what I would call hybrid books. So for example, my favourite book that I read in this video was actually a mystery thriller. It's difficult because I understand that from Waterstones' perspective, it's easier for them to say, here's our thriller of the month, rather than here's our thriller or mystery or crime book of the month. I understand that it's easier for them to just lump all of the genres into one, and in a way I do think it's good to show that the thriller genre doesn't just mean domestic thrillers or psychological psychological thrillers, it does encompass a whole range of subgenres. I think what I'm trying to say is that I really enjoyed doing this experiment because I was introduced to a lot of books that I wouldn't consider traditional thrillers and that ended up really surprising me. I really like going into books and finding out that they're actually different to what I expected, because it means that they feel more unique. And especially within the thriller genre, I do find with a lot of popular thrillers, I don't end up enjoying them because they feel quite tropey and predictable. And it's interesting that the two books that I really didn't like that I read for this vlog were two books that I'd heard of before I started this experiment. So I don't know whether that kind of impacted on my enjoyment because I already knew quite a lot about them before I picked them up. I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling now, so I am gonna wrap things up here and say thanks for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Let me know as well if you're interested in picking any of these books up. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye.